I slammed the bank statements on the breakfast table, my hands shaking with rage. $8,000. Every month. Straight into your personal account, Aaliyah. The morning light streamed through the kitchen windows of their perfect suburban home, illuminating the shocked expression on my son's face. Jordan's coffee mug froze halfway to his lips, his eyes darting between me and the papers scattered across their expensive marble countertop. "What are you talking about, Mama?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. I pointed to the highlighted transactions, my weathered finger trembling against the paper. "My rent money. The $8,000 I've been killing myself to pay you too. It's not going toward household expenses. It's going directly into your wife's private account." Jordan's face drained of color as he reached for the statements, his hands shaking worse than mine. "But, Aaliyah?" She didn't even flinch. She simply set down her teacup with perfect poise, those calculating eyes narrowing as she stared me down. "And what exactly do you think you're doing going through my personal financial records?" Her voice was ice cold, not a hint of shame or remorse. "Answer the question," I demanded, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. "Why are you stealing my money? Money I work 4 jobs to earn." The silence that followed was deafening. Jordan looked like he might be sick, the reality of what his wife had done slowly sinking in. But before he could speak, Aaliyah's perfectly painted lips curved into something resembling a smile, though there was nothing warm about it. "It's called investment strategy, Lorraine. Something you wouldn't understand." I felt my knees weaken, forcing myself to grip the edge of the table. 4 jobs. 16-hour days. My body breaking down at 58 years old. All to line the pockets of this woman who looked at me like I was nothing. "Jordan," I turned to my son, my only child, the boy I'd given everything for. "Did you know about this?" The hesitation in his eyes told me everything before he even opened his mouth. How did I, at 58 years old, end up working 4 jobs just to pay rent to my own son? How did the little boy I'd raised with nothing but love and sacrifice turn into a man who would let his wife exploit his own mother? It wasn't always like this. There was a time when it was just Jordan and me against the world. Before Aaliyah. Before greed poisoned what should have been sacred. Looking at them now, my son unable to meet my eyes, his wife coldly calculating her next move, I realized I was staring at strangers wearing familiar faces. And I knew right then, this breakfast table confrontation would either tear us apart forever or force the truth into the light. What I didn't know was that this betrayal was just the beginning. I was born and raised in East Detroit, back when the auto factories still hummed with life and gave honest folks a shot at the American dream. My daddy worked the assembly line at Ford for 37 years, and my mama cleaned houses to help make ends meet. We weren't rich by any measure, but we had pride in hard work and each other. That's where I met Clarence Parker, tall, gentle, with hands rough from machine work and a laugh that could fill a room. We married young, just 19, in the small Baptist church where my parents had wed. Our dreams were simple: a modest home, children to love, and enough food on the table to never know hunger. Jordan came along 2 years later. The day I held him, all 7 pounds and 6 ounces, I made a silent promise: this child would have more than I ever did. Life moved along its steady rhythm for the next 21 years. Clarence worked overtime whenever he could. I waited tables at a diner near our neighborhood. We saved enough for a small house on the east side, nothing fancy, but it was ours. Every extra penny went into a coffee can labeled Jordan's Future that we kept hidden in the kitchen cabinet. Then came that Tuesday in October when Clarence clutched his chest at the dinner table and was gone before the ambulance arrived. Heart attack, they said. No warning. Just like that, the man who'd been my rock for over 2 decades was gone, leaving behind a 15-year-old son and a widow who'd never paid a bill on her own. The funeral expenses took most of our savings. The life insurance barely covered 6 months of mortgage payments. With Jordan still in high school, I did the only thing I could. I worked harder. Morning shifts at the diner became morning to afternoon shifts. Evenings, I cleaned offices downtown. Weekends, I picked up work at a laundromat. My feet swelled so badly some nights I couldn't get my shoes off, so I slept with them on, too exhausted to cry over the pain or my loss. "Mama, you don't have to work so much," Jordan would tell me, his young face creased with worry that no teenager should know. "Education is expensive," I'd reply, massaging my aching knees. "And you're going to college. That's not negotiable." Jordan saw my struggle. That boy stepped up in ways that still make my heart swell with pride when I think about it. He got a part-time job bagging groceries after school. He kept his grades up, straight A's while working 20 hours a week. He never complained, not once, about the second-hand clothes or the times when dinner was just beans and rice for the third night in a row. His senior year, when the college acceptance letters started coming in, we sat at our small kitchen table crying together. Michigan State. University of Michigan. Northwestern. Places I'd only seen on TV, offering my son a chance I'd never dreamed possible for myself. "This one," Jordan said, holding up the scholarship letter from Michigan State. "It covers almost everything. I can work part-time for the rest." I remember shaking my head, pushing the letter away. "You won't work during school. You'll focus on your studies. I've got the rest covered." That meant a fourth job, night security at a warehouse. 20 hours a week of sitting alone in a cold building, fighting sleep, drinking convenience store coffee that burned my stomach. But every time exhaustion threatened to break me, I'd picture Jordan in a cap and gown, reaching for opportunities beyond the limitations of our neighborhood. For 4 years, I lived on barely 4 hours of sleep a day. My health suffered. My few friendships withered away. But Jordan thrived. Business major. Dean's List. Internships with companies whose names sounded important rolling off his tongue. When he walked across that stage to get his diploma, I sat in the audience weeping quietly into a handkerchief that had belonged to Clarence. "We did it, baby," I whispered to my late husband. "Our boy is going to be somebody." After graduation, Jordan landed a job at a financial firm downtown. His starting salary was more than I'd ever made in my life. Within 2 years, he was promoted twice. He bought himself a car, nothing flashy but new. He rented an apartment in one of those renovated buildings where young professionals lived. "Mama, you need to quit at least 2 of those jobs," he'd tell me during our Sunday dinners, the only tradition we'd managed to maintain through all the hard years. "Let me help you now." Pride made me refuse at first. I've been taking care of myself a long time. But eventually, my body made the decision for me. My back went out while lifting a trash bag at the office cleaning job. The doctor said years of overwork had taken their toll. So I reluctantly accepted Jordan's help with the rent, scaling back to just the diner job that I'd held the longest. For the first time in almost 15 years, I could breathe. I could sleep. I could sit down in the evening and watch a full TV show without nodding off from exhaustion. My son had become the man I'd sacrificed everything to raise, responsible, successful, and caring. Or so I thought. Then Jordan met Aaliyah Hamilton at a work function. Beautiful, sophisticated, from a wealthy family in the suburbs. The kind of woman who'd never known what it meant to wonder if the electricity would still be on next week. "She's amazing, Mama," he gushed over the phone. "You're going to love her." The first time he brought her to dinner at my apartment, I noticed how her eyes swept over my modest furniture, the slight curl of her lip when she saw the worn carpet, the way she barely touched the food I'd spent hours preparing. But Jordan was smiling at her like she'd hung the moon and stars, so I kept my reservations to myself. After all, didn't my boy deserve happiness after everything we'd been through? I had no idea that woman would eventually be the one to make me homeless at 58 years old, or that my own son would choose her over the mother who had given up everything for him. Family betrayal happens when you least expect it. Subscribe now. Your support helps bring more stories that could save you from the blindside I never saw coming. The restaurant Jordan chose for our first dinner with Aaliyah was the kind where they put cloth napkins on your lap and the menu didn't show prices. I felt out of place in my best church dress, which suddenly seemed faded under the crystal chandeliers. When they walked in, heads turned. Jordan, my son, handsome in his tailored suit, but it was Aaliyah who commanded attention. She glided rather than walked, in a red dress that hugged every curve, diamond studs catching the light. Her smile was practiced, perfect, the kind you see in magazines. "Miss Lorraine," she said, extending her hand with nails painted the exact shade of her dress, "Jordan has told me so much about you." Her handshake was brief, barely a touch, and her eyes never quite met mine. Instead, they drifted around the restaurant, as if taking inventory of who might be watching her entrance. "Isn't she incredible, Mama?" Jordan whispered when Aaliyah excused herself to the restroom. His eyes followed her the entire way, like a man hypnotized. "She's certainly beautiful," I answered carefully. "What does she do again?" "High-end real estate. She only works with luxury properties." The pride in his voice was unmistakable. "She closed a $2 million deal last month alone." Throughout dinner, I watched how Aaliyah spoke almost exclusively about herself. Her clients, her accomplishments, her tastes. She asked me exactly 3 questions: where I worked, her smile tightening when I mentioned the diner, where I lived, a slight raise of her eyebrows at my address, and whether I had other children, a visible relief when I said no. When the check came, she excused herself to the restroom again. Jordan reached for his wallet, and I noticed a new gold watch on his wrist. "That's new," I said, nodding toward it. He glanced down, almost guiltily. "Aaliyah gave it to me. Anniversary gift." "Anniversary? You've only known her 3 months." He laughed, but it sounded nervous. "Monthly anniversary. She likes to celebrate every month on the day we met." That was the first warning sign I ignored. How quickly she had my son marking time by her calendar, spending beyond his means to keep up with her expectations. 2 weeks later, Jordan called to tell me they were moving in together. A month after that, he was showing me a diamond ring that cost more than my yearly rent. "Don't you think this is all happening very fast?" I asked as gently as I could. "When you know," he answered, repeating what sounded like Aaliyah's words in his mouth. "I wasn't invited to help with wedding planning." "Aaliyah had a vision," Jordan explained, "and too many opinions would complicate things. I received an invitation in the mail like any other guest, thick cream paper with gold lettering, requesting my presence at the grand ballroom of the Renaissance Center Hotel. The day of the wedding, I wore the navy blue dress I'd saved 3 months to buy. I arrived early hoping to see Jordan before the ceremony, but was told by one of Aaliyah's bridesmaids that the groom was unavailable. I sat alone on the bride's side of the aisle. Apparently the only family member Aaliyah had invited was her mother, a thin woman who spent the entire ceremony typing on her phone. No father walked her down the aisle. No siblings dabbed tears during vows. Just business associates and friends who looked like they'd stepped out of fashion magazines. The reception was a showcase of excess. Ice sculptures, champagne fountains, a 10-piece band. Jordan looked happy but anxious, constantly checking with Aaliyah before making any move. When it came time for the mother-son dance, Aaliyah pulled him aside first. I couldn't hear what she said, but Jordan's face fell slightly before he plastered on a smile and led me to the dance floor. "Are you happy, baby?" I asked as we swayed to the music. "Of course, Mama. Everything's perfect." But his eyes kept darting back to where Aaliyah stood watching us, her smile fixed in place. The final bill for that wedding had to be in the six figures. I later learned that Jordan had emptied his savings account and taken out a loan to pay for it. When I asked why Aaliyah's family hadn't contributed, Jordan mumbled something about complicated family dynamics and changed the subject. 1 month after the wedding, they closed on a house in Bloomfield Hills, a sprawling 5-bedroom with a 3-car garage and a pool. The kind of place that belonged in movies, not in the reality of a young couple just starting out. How can you afford this? I asked during their housewarming party, where I knew no one except my son. Aaliyah got an amazing deal through her connections, Jordan said. And we're both making good money now. But I caught the worry in his eyes when she announced she'd ordered custom furniture for every room. I saw how he flinched when she mentioned the landscaper she'd hired. That night, as I waited for my bus home, I watched through the window as Aaliyah directed Jordan where to hang an expensive painting. When he suggested a different spot, she shook her head firmly. He complied immediately, moving it exactly where she pointed. It was like watching my son slowly disappear, replaced by someone who lived only to please his wife. Notice the red flags I missed? Subscribe before you make the same mistakes with people you trust. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Simple white envelope with the property management company's logo in the corner. Nothing special about it, except that it shattered my entire world in 3 paragraphs. Dear tenant, it began, cold and impersonal despite my 20 years in that apartment. We regret to inform you that the building has been sold to developers. All current leases will terminate in 60 days. Just like that. 2 decades of my life, dismissed in 60 days' notice. The place where I'd raised Jordan after Clarence died. Where I'd celebrated my son's college acceptance. Where I'd cried myself to sleep through countless nights of bone-deep exhaustion. All of it, gone with a single piece of paper. I called every affordable housing option in Detroit. The waiting lists were years long. Private rentals wanted first and last month's rent, security deposits, perfect credit scores. My savings had gone to Jordan's education and then helping him with his wedding. My credit was decent but not stellar. Every door closed before I could even get my foot in. After 3 weeks of rejection, I sat at my kitchen table surrounded by apartment listings I couldn't afford and faced the truth. I was about to be homeless at 58 years old. With shaking hands, I dialed Jordan's number. Mama? Everything okay? His voice brought instant tears to my eyes. Not really, baby. I explained about the building sale, my voice cracking despite my best efforts to stay strong. I've looked everywhere, but with rent prices these days and my income. There was a long silence. Too long. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. Let me talk to Aaliyah, he finally said. We have all those empty bedrooms. Maybe you could stay with us until you find something. The relief nearly buckled my knees. I wouldn't ask if I had anywhere else to go, I assured him. It would just be temporary. I'll call you back, he promised. That call didn't come until the next evening. I answered on the first ring. So, I talked to Aaliyah, Jordan began, his voice tight in that way it got when he was uncomfortable. She's okay with you staying with us, but... But what? Well, you know our neighborhood is expensive. The homeowners association fees alone are crazy. And our utilities, the pool maintenance. My stomach clenched. Jordan, what are you saying? He cleared his throat. Aaliyah thinks, and I agree, that everyone needs to contribute. So we'd need you to pay rent. I closed my eyes, swallowing my pride. Of course. I understand. What were you thinking? Maybe $1,000 a month? I could manage that with my diner job. His uncomfortable chuckle made my eyes snap open. No, Mama. The going rate for rooms in our area is much higher. How much higher? The number he quoted nearly stopped my heart. $8,000 a month. 8. I couldn't even finish the sentence. Jordan, that's more than my entire income. How could I possibly? Aaliyah did the research. That's the market rate for our neighborhood. But I'm not the market, I whispered. I'm your mother. There was muffled talking on his end, Aaliyah's voice, though I couldn't make out the words. When Jordan spoke again, his tone was firmer. This is actually a favor, Mama. With your income and credit score, you couldn't rent a closet in our area. Tears rolled down my face as I realized what was happening. My own son, the boy I'd worked multiple jobs to raise, was treating me like a business transaction. If it's too much, he continued when I didn't respond, we understand. We just can't have people staying for free. It wouldn't be fair. People. Not my mother. Just people. Jordan, I tried one last time. Please talk to Aaliyah again. I'm not asking to stay forever, just until I can find something in my price range. Another muffled consultation. Then, 8,000 is already discounted, Mama. That's the best we can do. I hung up the phone and sobbed into my hands. The eviction date loomed just weeks away. My options had dwindled to zero. With crushing clarity, I realized I would have to accept their terms or live on the streets. 3 days later, I swallowed the last crumb of my dignity and called Jordan back. I'll take the room, I said, my voice hollow. But I'll need to work more hours to afford it. Great. He sounded relieved, as if he'd just closed a business deal rather than extorted his own mother. Aaliyah will email you the rental agreement. We'll expect the first payment when you move in next weekend. As I packed up 20 years of memories into cardboard boxes, a question kept haunting me. When had my son transformed from the compassionate boy I raised into the stranger who could charge his own mother a fortune just to avoid homelessness? And deeper still, what would happen when I couldn't keep up with the payments? Could you handle this level of rejection from your child? Subscribe now. These stories prepare you for life's harshest moments. My new home was a guest bedroom at the far end of their sprawling house, as far from the master suite as possible. The room was perfectly staged like something from a catalog, with crisp white bedding and blue accent pillows that matched the curtains. No warmth, no personality. Just a sterile space that looked untouched by human hands. The cleaning service comes Tuesdays and Fridays, Aaliyah informed me as she showed me around. Please make sure your personal items are organized. They won't touch anything that's not put away properly. I nodded, clutching my 2 suitcases that contained what remained of my life after I'd sold or donated everything that wouldn't fit in Jordan's car. And the kitchen? I asked, thinking I might at least cook for them occasionally. Aaliyah's smile tightened. We have a meal delivery service. But you're welcome to prepare your own food as long as everything is cleaned up immediately afterward. That first night, I lay awake in that perfect, cold bed, mentally calculating how I could possibly earn $8,000 every month. The diner job paid $2.83 an hour plus tips, about $1,800 in a good month. I needed more than 4 times that amount. By the end of my first week there, I had cobbled together a schedule that made my previous work life look like a vacation. 4:30 a.m., wake up, shower quietly so as not to disturb the main part of the house. 5:30 a.m., begin shift at airport cleaning service, scrubbing terminals before the morning rush. 11 a.m., rush to the diner for lunch shift, serving food until 5 p.m. 6 p.m., start evening shift at 24-hour grocery store, stocking shelves until midnight. Weekends, house sitting and pet care for wealthy families in their neighborhood. Between jobs, I changed uniforms in public restrooms. I ate standing up, usually just a granola bar or whatever leftover food the diner was going to throw away. I caught 20-minute naps on bus rides between locations. By the second month, my body began to revolt. My hands developed tremors from exhaustion. The arches in my feet collapsed, making each step painful. I lost 15 pounds because I rarely had time to eat a proper meal. The varicose veins in my legs swelled and throbbed, turning angry purple against my skin. One night, I fainted in the grocery store stockroom. A teenager found me crumpled between boxes of cereal. "Are you okay, ma'am?" he asked, his young face pinched with concern. I lied and said I'd just tripped. The truth, that my 60-hour work weeks were killing me, would have meant losing one of my jobs. And without all 4 incomes, I'd be on the street. Meanwhile, Aaliyah lived like royalty in the same house. I rarely saw her work. Most days, she lounged by the pool, taking business calls that seemed to involve a lot of laughter and gossip. She had standing appointments at a spa every Wednesday, massage, facial, hair, nails, that kept her away from home for the entire day. Her closet was bigger than my bedroom, filled with designer clothes still bearing tags. New packages arrived almost daily: shoes, handbags, jewelry. She bought, used once, then discarded or stored items worth more than I earned in months. Jordan left early each morning in his pressed suits, returning late each evening looking increasingly worn. The light in his eyes had dimmed since their wedding. Sometimes I caught him staring at the monthly bills with a furrow between his brows. But whenever Aaliyah entered the room, he would quickly rearrange his face into a smile. On my rare day off, I was dozing on my bed when Aaliyah's voice drifted through the air vent that connected to her office next door. She was on the phone, her tone animated in a way it never was around me. "Girl, you would not believe how perfect this setup is," she laughed. $8,000 a month. Can you believe it? That old lady really thinks she's lucky to stay here. My heart stopped. I pressed my ear closer to the vent. Jordan had no idea what market rate even was. I just made up a number, and he went with it. Another laugh, cruel and cold. "Honestly, I didn't even want her here, but if we're getting paid, might as well milk it." The person on the other end said something I couldn't hear. "No, we don't need the money. But I'm saving for that vacation property in the Caymans, and this is the fastest way to build up the down payment. Besides, it's not like she has anywhere else to go." I pulled away from the vent, my hands trembling worse than usual. Not from exhaustion this time, but from rage and heartbreak. My son's wife was using me as her personal ATM, funding luxury purchases with money I was quite literally killing myself to earn. That evening, I waited until Aaliyah went to her book club before approaching Jordan in his home office. My legs ached so badly I had to lean against the doorframe for support. "Jordan," I said softly, "can we talk?" He glanced up from his laptop, circles under his eyes. "What's up, Mama? Make it quick, I have a presentation tomorrow." I told him what I'd overheard. About Aaliyah making up the rental amount. About her plans for a vacation home. About her laughing at my struggle. I expected shock, anger on my behalf, maybe even shame for his part in it. Instead, his face hardened. "You were eavesdropping on my wife's private conversations?" "Not intentionally, but—" "And now you're trying to cause problems between us?" He stood up, closing his laptop with a snap. "Mama, I know it's been hard for you since Dad died, but you can't keep making up stories because you're jealous of my success." My mouth fell open. Jealous? Jordan, I'm working myself into an early grave to pay rent to my own son. "Nobody forced you to take the offer," he said coldly. "If you're unhappy here, you're free to leave." "And go where? You know I have nowhere else." He sighed, running a hand over his face. "Look, Aaliyah comes from a different world than we do. She has standards for her home. The rent is fair considering the neighborhood. She admitted she made up the number. She's using me to save for a vacation home. Something flickered in his eyes, doubt perhaps, but it vanished quickly. I don't want to hear any more about this. Aaliyah has done a lot for me. You don't understand. As I limped back to my room, I realized the most painful truth. My son was gone. The boy I'd raised had been replaced by this man who would defend his wife's cruelty rather than protect his mother. That night, as I soaked my swollen feet in the bathroom sink, I caught my reflection in the mirror. Hollow cheeks. Gray skin. Eyes dulled by exhaustion. I barely recognized myself. How much longer could I survive this? And what would happen when my body finally gave out completely? Your family could turn on you tomorrow. Subscribe for the warning signs I wish I'd recognized. 3 months passed. My body continued its slow collapse under the weight of 4 jobs and chronic sleep deprivation. The doctor at the free clinic warned me my blood pressure was dangerously high, but medication was a luxury I couldn't afford. Not when every dollar went toward that $8,000 monthly payment. I became a ghost in that house, leaving before dawn, returning after midnight, speaking to no one. Jordan and I exchanged maybe 10 words a week. Aaliyah acknowledged me only when reminding me the rent was due. Then came the night that changed everything. I dragged myself home after a double shift at the diner. My right knee had swollen to twice its normal size, and the pain shot lightning through my leg with each step. The house was dark and quiet. Jordan was away at a business conference, and Aaliyah had mentioned a girls' weekend in Chicago. I limped past Aaliyah's office, noticing the door slightly ajar. She always kept it locked when she was away. Always. My cleaning instructions specifically mentioned that her office was off-limits to everyone, including the housekeeping service. I should have kept walking. Should have respected her privacy the way she never respected my dignity. But something, call it instinct, call it divine intervention, made me push that door open wider. The moonlight through the windows illuminated her glass desk, where stacks of papers lay scattered as if she'd left in a hurry. I flipped on the small desk lamp, my heart racing with the knowledge I was crossing a line. If Aaliyah found out I'd been in her sanctuary, it would give her reason enough to throw me out. I don't know what I expected to find. Maybe evidence of an affair. Maybe proof she was involved in something illegal. What I discovered was far more personal. There, spread across her desk, were bank statements. Dozens of them, organized by month. My eyes caught a recurring entry, $8,000, tenant payment highlighted in yellow on each statement. My rent money. But it wasn't going into their joint household account as Jordan had claimed. It was going directly into Aaliyah's personal account at First Caribbean International Bank. My hands trembled as I flipped through more statements. Each month, my $8,000 appeared in her account, but never transferred to any household expenses. Instead, immediately after my deposits, there were transfers to an account labeled Cayman Property Fund. She wasn't just overcharging me. She was stealing from me, and from Jordan. My son didn't even know where my money was going. I kept searching, pulling open desk drawers, rifling through folders with a desperation born of months of suffering. In the bottom drawer, hidden beneath tax documents, I found a real estate brochure for a beachfront villa in Grand Cayman. The property was circled in red ink, $960,000. The math was simple and sickening. $8,000 a month for 10 years. The exact amount needed to buy that villa in cash. She had planned to use me as her personal piggy bank for a decade. To work me to death for her luxury vacation home. Next to the brochure was a leather portfolio. Inside, property documents for their house, the house I was paying a fortune to live in. I scanned the pages, looking for the mortgage information, wondering just how much they were actually paying. What I found froze the blood in my veins. There was no mortgage. The house had been paid for in full, a gift from Aaliyah's parents as a wedding present. The property taxes were less than $12,000 a year. The utilities and maintenance couldn't possibly exceed $3,000 monthly. They owned their home outright, yet charged me $8,000 a month to stay in one bedroom. The magnitude of the deception crushed the air from my lungs. I sank into Aaliyah's expensive leather chair, my body shaking uncontrollably. Not just from rage, but from the devastating realization that my own son was either complicit in this scheme or so controlled by his wife that he'd allowed his mother to be exploited. I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers and began taking photos of everything. The bank statements, the property documents, the Cayman brochure, the account numbers. Click after click, I documented the evidence of their betrayal, tears blurring my vision so badly I had to keep wiping my eyes to see the screen. When I had photographed everything, I carefully returned each document to its exact place. Then I turned off the lamp and closed the door precisely as I'd found it. Back in my room, I lay on the bed staring at the ceiling, the evidence safely stored in my phone. The physical pain in my body seemed distant now, overshadowed by the searing agony in my heart. How could Jordan allow this? Did he know? Was he truly that blind to Aaliyah's manipulation, or had he changed so completely that he no longer cared about his own mother's suffering? I thought about the boy who'd once given me handmade Mother's Day cards, who'd worked at the grocery store as a teenager and secretly put his earnings into my empty wallet when he thought I was sleeping, who'd held my hand at his father's funeral and promised, "I'll always take care of you, Mama." Where had that boy gone? And who was this stranger wearing his face? Dawn found me still awake, my decision made. I couldn't continue this way, working myself to death to fund Aaliyah's beach house dreams. The truth needed to come out, whatever the consequences. I would confront them both when they returned. Show them the evidence. Force Jordan to see what his wife was doing. The thought terrified me. I had nowhere else to go. No savings. No friends who could take me in. If they threw me out, I'd be homeless at 58 with failing health and empty pockets. But continuing this charade would kill me faster than the streets. I tucked my phone under my pillow and finally closed my eyes, allowing myself a few hours of sleep before my morning shift. My last thought before drifting off was of Clarence. What would he think of the man our son had become? What would he tell me to do? I'd find out soon enough. Jordan was returning tomorrow evening. Aaliyah the morning after. By this time next week, I'd either have justice or nothing at all. The moment everything changes comes without warning. Subscribe now. Don't face these moments unprepared. I called out sick from all 4 jobs the next day, something I'd never done before. My body needed the rest, but more importantly, I needed to be fully present for what was about to happen. Jordan returned from his business trip around 6 that evening. I heard him drop his luggage in the foyer, his footsteps heading straight to the kitchen. I waited, giving him time to settle in, rehearsing what I would say when morning came. I barely slept that night. Every scenario played through my mind. Jordan believing me, Jordan throwing me out, Aaliyah somehow twisting everything to make me look like the villain. By dawn, my nerves were frayed, but my resolve had hardened like concrete. I rose early and prepared breakfast, something I rarely had time to do anymore. Eggs, bacon, grits, the way Jordan liked them as a boy. The scent filled the kitchen, a reminder of simpler times when we were a family. Jordan appeared first, drawn by the familiar smells. His face registered surprise, then appreciation. "Wow, Mama. What's the occasion?" "Just thought it would be nice to have breakfast together," I said, keeping my voice steady. "We hardly see each other these days." He poured himself coffee and sat down, already checking emails on his phone. I noticed the dark circles under his eyes, the way his shoulders hunched forward as if carrying a weight. 20 minutes later, Aaliyah swept in wearing a silk robe, her hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. She eyed the breakfast spread with suspicion. "I thought you'd be at work," she said, not bothering with a greeting. "I took the day off." I placed a plate in front of her. "We need to talk." Something in my tone made Jordan look up from his phone. Aaliyah narrowed her eyes but sat down across from me. "About what?" she asked, pushing the plate away untouched. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my phone in my pocket. This was the moment, the point of no return. "About the money," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "About the $8,000 I pay you every month." Jordan frowned. "What about it? We've been through this, Mama." "Have we?" I pulled out my phone, opened the photos, and placed it on the table between them. "Have we really discussed how my rent money goes directly into Aaliyah's personal Caribbean bank account? Or how she's saving for $1 million beach house with money I'm killing myself to earn?" The color drained from Jordan's face as he picked up the phone, swiping through the photos. "What is this? Where did you get these?" "Your wife left her office door open." I turned to Aaliyah, whose expression had frozen. "Careless mistake." "You went through my private documents?" Aaliyah's voice was dangerously soft. "I did. And I found out this house has no mortgage. It was a wedding gift from your parents." I looked at Jordan. "Did you know that, son? Or did she tell you there were monthly payments that my rent was helping cover?" Jordan's eyes darted to Aaliyah, confusion clouding his face. "The mortgage is over $5,000 a month. That's what you told me." Aaliyah's mask slipped then, just a flicker of panic before she composed herself. "This is ridiculous. Your mother is clearly jealous of our relationship. She's making things up to drive us apart." "The bank statements don't lie," I said, pointing to the phone. "Every month, $8,000 from tenant payment goes into your personal account, then transfers to Cayman Property Fund. You're using me to buy yourself a beach house." Jordan scrolled through more photos, his hands beginning to shake. "Aaliyah, what is this? These transfers? This account I've never seen. The property listing." "Jordan, baby," Aaliyah's voice turned honey-sweet as she reached for his hand. "You know how your mother has always resented me. She's manipulating these documents too." "I took those photos myself," I interrupted. 2 nights ago. Check the timestamps. Check the account numbers against your records. Your wife has been stealing from both of us." Jordan pulled his hand away from Aaliyah's, his face hardening. "Is it true? Is there no mortgage on this house?" The silence stretched between them, taut as a wire. Finally, Aaliyah's perfectly painted lips curved into a cold smile. "Fine. There's no mortgage. My parents bought the house outright." She leaned back, crossing her arms. "So what? That doesn't mean we're obligated to house your mother for free." $8,000, Jordan repeated, his voice hollow. "You told me that was market rate. That we needed it for the mortgage and expenses." "We needed it because I deserved compensation for having your mother in my home." Aaliyah's voice rose sharply. "Do you think I wanted your charity case mother living here? Tracking in her waitress uniform dirt, taking up space, reminding everyone of where you came from." I flinched at her words, but Jordan's reaction stunned me. He slammed his hand on the table, coffee cups rattling. "That charity case raised me by herself after my father died. She worked 3 jobs so I could go to college." His voice shook with rage. "And you've been charging her rent for a paid-off house and pocketing the money?" Aaliyah's composure shattered completely. "Don't you dare take that tone with me. Everything I've done has been for us, for our future." "By exploiting my mother? By lying to me?" Jordan stood, towering over the table. How long were you planning to keep this up? As long as necessary, Aaliyah hissed, abandoning all pretense. 10 years should have covered the Cayman property. Then we could have finally been rid of her. The naked cruelty in her voice silenced the room. Jordan stared at his wife as if seeing her for the first time, this beautiful stranger he'd married, whose soul was now laid bare in all its ugliness. "Get out," he whispered. Aaliyah blinked. "Excuse me." "Get out of this house. Now." His voice grew firmer. "Pack a bag and leave." She laughed, high and brittle. "You can't throw me out. This house is in both our names." "Then I'll leave with my mother." Jordan turned to me, his eyes filled with shame and regret. "Mama, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." "Oh, please." Aaliyah stood now too, her robe falling open to reveal designer silk pajamas. "You really think she'd have nowhere to go if not for us? She's been playing you for years, Jordan. Making you feel guilty, dependent on her approval. That's enough." Jordan's voice was ice. "No, it's not nearly enough." Aaliyah leaned across the table, her face inches from mine. "You think you've won? You have nothing. No savings, no home of your own. You're one missed rent payment away from the streets. Without us, you're just a pathetic old woman who couldn't even keep her husband alive." The cruel reference to Clarence felt like a physical blow. Before I could respond, Jordan stepped between us. "You have 1 hour to pack your things, Aaliyah. After that, I'm changing the locks." Her eyes widened in genuine shock. "You would choose her over me? After everything I've given you?" "Given me?" Jordan laughed bitterly. "You've taken everything from me, my savings, my relationship with my mother, my self-respect." He pointed to the door. 1 hour. Aaliyah's face transformed into something ugly and raw. "If I leave this house, I'm never coming back. And I'll take you for everything in the divorce." The threat hung in the air between them. I held my breath, watching my son's face. This was the moment of truth. Would he stand firm, or would he crumble under the threat of losing his wife and half his assets? Jordan looked at me, then back at Aaliyah. His next words would determine both our fates. Would you have the courage to confront your loved ones? Subscribe to see how this showdown ends. I held my breath as Jordan's expression shifted, his jaw working as if chewing on his next words. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence. "Jordan," Aaliyah's voice softened, her hand reaching for his arm. "Baby, think about what you're doing. Everything we've built together, our lifestyle, our future plans. Are you really going to throw it all away?" My son's eyes met mine, filled with conflict and something else, fear. I recognized it instantly. The fear of losing everything he'd worked for. The fear of starting over. "She's manipulating you," Aaliyah continued, pressing her advantage. "Using your guilt to drive a wedge between us. We can work this out." I watched the resolve drain from my son's face like water through sand. "Maybe we should all calm down," he said finally, his voice weaker than moments before. "Talk about this rationally." My heart sank to the floor. I knew what was coming before he even turned to me. "Mama," he began, not quite meeting my eyes, "what Aaliyah did was wrong. The money arrangement wasn't fair. But throwing her out isn't the answer." "Jordan," I whispered, "she was stealing from both of us. Lying to you for years." "I know, and we'll figure out a new arrangement. A fair rent. But I can't just," he gestured helplessly at Aaliyah, who now stood with tears glistening perfectly in her eyes. "She's my wife. And I'm your mother," I wanted to scream. "The woman who gave up everything for you." But I knew it wouldn't matter. I saw the calculation in his eyes, the mortgage-free house, the lifestyle he'd grown accustomed to, the social standing Aaliyah's connections provided. All weighed against a mother who had nothing to offer but love. Love had lost. "I understand," I said quietly, though my heart was shattering into a million pieces. Aaliyah's tears vanished instantly, replaced by a cold smile of triumph. "I think it would be best," she said, her voice dripping with false concern, "if we had some space while we work through this family issue. Perhaps your mother could stay somewhere else temporarily." Jordan nodded, relief washing over his face at this easy solution. "Just for a little while, Mama. Until we sort things out." "Sort things out?" I echoed, disbelief making my voice crack. She was stealing thousands from me every month while I worked 4 jobs. My health is ruined. What exactly needs sorting out? "You're getting emotional," Aaliyah cut in smoothly. "This is exactly why some distance would be healthy." I looked at my son, this stranger wearing Jordan's face, and realized the terrible truth. He would always choose her. No matter what she did. No matter what it cost me. "When do you want me gone?" I asked, my voice hollow. "There's no rush," Jordan said quickly, though his eyes darted to Aaliyah for confirmation. "Today would be best," she replied, not bothering to hide her satisfaction. "A clean break." I nodded once, then walked to my room on legs that felt like they might collapse beneath me. The few possessions I'd kept after losing my apartment fit easily into 2 suitcases. I packed methodically, tears streaming silently down my face, wondering where I would sleep that night. The homeless shelter downtown had a 2-month waiting list. The cheap motels by the highway charged $85 a night. Money I didn't have after paying Aaliyah's extortionate rent. Every friend who might have taken me in had drifted away during the years I'd worked multiple jobs. At 58 years old, after a lifetime of hard work and sacrifice, I was about to be homeless. When I emerged with my bags, Jordan was waiting in the hallway. He couldn't quite look at me. "I've called you an Uber," he said, pressing $300 bills into my hand. "This should help until we figure something out." $300. Not even enough for 4 nights in the cheapest motel. "Is this what your mother's worth to you?" I asked quietly. "After everything?" He flinched but said nothing. Aaliyah appeared behind him, her arm sliding possessively around his waist. "The car will be here in 5 minutes," she announced, checking her watch. "I'll help you with your bags." Her eagerness to see me gone was the final twist of the knife. As we waited by the front door, Jordan mumbled promises to call, to work things out, to find me a proper place to stay. Empty words that meant nothing. The Uber pulled into their circular driveway. Aaliyah practically sprinted to open the front door. "It's been so lovely having you," she said loudly for the driver's benefit, her smile dazzling and deadly. Then, in a whisper meant only for me, "Don't come back." As the driver loaded my bags, I turned one last time to my son. "Jordan, please." For a moment, just a moment, I thought I saw my boy again in his eyes, the child I'd raised with such love. Then Aaliyah's hand tightened on his arm, and the moment passed. "I'll call you," he said weakly. The door closed between us with devastating finality. As the car pulled away, I watched through the back window as Aaliyah wrapped her arms around my son's neck, her victory complete. The last glimpse I had of them was Jordan allowing himself to be led back into the house, his shoulders slumped in surrender. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "Where to, ma'am?" I had no answer. Even those closest to you can abandon you. Subscribe now. Learn to survive what I never thought possible. The $300 Jordan gave me bought 3 nights in a roadside motel near the airport. After that, I slept in the employee break room at the diner with my manager's reluctant permission. I showered in the gym where I'd picked up a 5th job cleaning locker rooms. My body was failing faster now, but survival didn't leave room for rest. 2 weeks passed with no word from Jordan. I tried calling twice, but the calls went straight to voicemail. I'd given up hope of hearing from him again. Then came the call that changed everything. It was nearly midnight when my phone rang with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, thinking it was a bill collector. Thank God I did. "Is this Lorraine Parker?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes," I answered cautiously. "You don't know me. My name is Veronica Wright. I was one of Aaliyah's friends." My grip tightened on the phone. "What do you want?" "I thought you should know what's happening. Aaliyah's been cheating on Jordan for over a year with one of her clients, Gregory Townsend. Wealthy real estate developer. The Cayman house? That wasn't just for vacations. She was planning to leave Jordan once she had enough money saved." My breath caught. "How do you know this?" "Because she told me. We weren't really friends, more like competitive colleagues. But lately she's been careless, showing off. Last month at lunch, she showed me the divorce papers she'd already drafted. She was just waiting to hit her financial target before serving him." I closed my eyes, pain and vindication warring within me. "Why are you telling me this?" A pause. "Let's just say Aaliyah hurt people besides you. And karma's overdue." The line went dead. I sat frozen on my makeshift bed in the break room, wondering what to do with this information. Part of me, the hurt, vengeful part, wanted to call Jordan immediately. But would he even believe me? As it turned out, I didn't need to make that decision. 3 days later, Jordan showed up at the diner during my shift. One look at his face told me everything. Hollow eyes, unshaven, clothes wrinkled as if he'd slept in them. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice rough. We sat in a back booth. He couldn't meet my eyes. "You were right about her," he said finally. "About everything." He'd discovered the affair by accident, Aaliyah's phone lighting up with explicit messages while she was in the shower. When confronted, she didn't even deny it. Instead, she'd laughed and told him she'd been planning her exit strategy for months. She filed for divorce the next day, Jordan said, staring into his untouched coffee. "Her lawyer's ruthless. She's going after everything. The house, my investments, even my retirement accounts. Says she's entitled to half of everything I've earned during the marriage." "Can she do that?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "The house is in both our names. Most of our accounts are joint." He ran a hand over his face. "I trusted her completely, Mama. I put everything in her hands. Including your mother, I thought but didn't say. The worst part," he continued, "she's been transferring money to offshore accounts for months. My lawyer says it'll be nearly impossible to trace. She was planning this all along, using me until she had enough to leave with her real boyfriend." I reached across the table, taking his hand. Despite everything, he was still my son. Seeing him broken like this tore at my heart. "I lost everything, Mama," he whispered, a tear sliding down his cheek. "The house goes to auction next month. My credit is ruined. I can barely afford the motel I'm staying in." The irony wasn't lost on either of us. I should have felt triumphant. The woman who'd tormented me, who'd stolen my money and my son, was finally facing consequences. But looking at Jordan, truly seeing how thoroughly she destroyed him, I felt only sadness. "What happens now?" I asked gently. He squeezed my hand, his eyes finally meeting mine, filled with shame and regret. "I don't know. But I need to ask you something, and I have no right. Justice finds its way eventually. Subscribe to witness more moments where karma delivers perfectly." That conversation in the diner booth changed everything. Jordan asked if he could stay with me while he figured things out. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. The son who'd charged his mother $8,000 in rent now needed a place to sleep. I didn't say yes immediately. The wounds were still too fresh, the betrayal too deep. But as I looked at my boy, truly my boy again, stripped of Aaliyah's influence and his own arrogance, I saw the child I'd raised. Broken, humbled, but still mine. I can't offer much, I told him honestly. I'm sleeping in the diner's break room. His face crumpled with shame. God, Mama. What have I done to you? We found a small one-bedroom apartment in a senior living complex that accepted my application based on age, not credit score. The rent was manageable with my diner job, though I kept the gym cleaning position too, just in case. Jordan slept on an air mattress in the living room. He found work at a small accounting firm, a steep step down from his corporate position, but they didn't care about his ruined credit or the employment gap from his post-divorce depression. Those first months were awkward, tense. The apartment felt too small for our shared history, too cramped for the words that needed saying. Jordan tried, bringing home groceries, cooking dinner when I worked late, fixing things around the apartment. You don't need to earn your place here, I told him one night. Yes, I do, he answered quietly. I might spend the rest of my life trying. Slowly, painfully, we rebuilt. Not what we had before, that was gone forever. Something new, fragile but honest. 6 months after moving in together, Jordan received his first bonus from the new job. He handed me the entire check. It's not $8,000, he said, his voice catching. But it's a start. I pushed it back to him. Keep it. That's not how family works. Then how does it work, Mama? Because I don't know anymore. The question hung between us, heavy with meaning. Family protects each other, I said finally. Family sees each other, truly sees. Not as tools or burdens or stepping stones, but as human beings worthy of dignity and respect. We both cried that night, a cleansing release of pain carried too long. A year has passed since then. My health has improved now that I'm down to one job with reasonable hours. Jordan was promoted recently. He's saving for his own place, though neither of us is in a rush for him to leave. As for Aaliyah, last we heard, she and the real estate developer broke up shortly after she left Jordan. Her perfect plan collapsed when her offshore accounts were frozen in a federal investigation. Karma indeed has its own timeline. The lessons I've learned came at a terrible price. Trust must be earned, not assumed, even from blood. Love without respect is just manipulation dressed in pretty clothes. And sometimes you must lose everything to discover what truly matters. Jordan and I have dinner together every Sunday, a tradition restored. Last week, he asked if I could ever truly forgive him. I told him the truth. Forgiveness isn't a moment, it's a process. We're working on it, day by day. That's the thing about family bonds. They can stretch, fray, even tear completely. But if there's willingness on both sides, something new can be woven from the broken threads. Not perfect, not unmarked by what happened, but perhaps stronger for having been tested. The mother who sits before you now is not the same woman who once worked 4 jobs to pay her son's exploitative rent. She has boundaries. She has peace. She has learned that sometimes love means walking away, and sometimes it means offering a second chance. But only when it's earned. Not every family betrayal ends with justice. Subscribe now, turn on notifications, and tell me in the comments, could you ever forgive your child for this level of betrayal? Where are you watching from today?